And we would like to express gratitude to the following sponsors: the Aloha Fund, the Douglas County Democrats, and the Douglas County Republicans. As a reminder, we are recording these proceedings today. The recording will be posted to the two chambers' social media accounts this week. The event is being live streamed and recorded for social media distribution. By agreeing to participate, each candidate has given their permission to be filmed for this event. This event will not be open to the public. It's only available for registered members of the two chambers who have reserved seats here today and are in attendance. There will not be an open question and answer section as part of this forum. All questions will be asked by me as the moderator, and candidates are seated by each district they are seeking to serve. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to make a 60-second opening statement. At the end of opening statements, each district pair will get two different questions, randomly choosing numbers that are before them to select their questions. We will alternate who goes first from each pair, and when your opponent is asked a question, you will each have up to 90 seconds to respond. All 5 candidates have been given 3 rebuttal cards, which may be used to weigh on any question that was addressed to a different pair of candidates. So, for example, if a pair from District 45 was asked a question about a state budget and a candidate from District 43 considers that a critical issue, they may use the rebuttal card to chime in after the 2 candidates from 45 completed their answers. Since you only have 3 rebuttal cards, choose wisely. When you're out of cards, you cannot add in to any additional comment. Rebuttals are limited to 60 seconds. All times will be strictly enforced. We will signal you when you have 15 seconds left, and we will ring the bell when your time is up. Unfortunately, I will have to interrupt you if you continue beyond your allotted time. Each candidate will be given a 90-second closing statement, and no rebuttals will be allowed during the opening or closing statements. So let's get started. At this time, each candidate has the opportunity for a 60-second introduction and opening remarks. I'd like to start with House District 43, Mr. Bob Marshall.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm Bob Marshall. I was born and raised in Colorado. Served 28 years in the Marine Corps, clerked for a federal circuit judge, did commercial litigation in Denver, and then worked for the Large Business International Litigation Division of the IRS after earning a tax LLM. I'm consistently one of the top 3 Democrats in the State House on business issues. Among many others, I've been endorsed by the Colorado Association of Realtors, Colorado Family Physicians, and for the first time ever in my district, the Colorado Chamber of Commerce is not endorsing the Republican. My top 3 priorities are public safety, public education, and the environment, but since getting into the legislature, I've become a top expert on governance, good governance, veterans issues, and tax issues. In fact, the National Conference of State Legislatures invited me to be one of only 4 state legislators to present as a panelist at the conference this summer. I represent my district. I don't represent an ideology. I don't represent special interests, and I hope I can earn your support. To support me, go bobforcolorado.com. That's B-O-B, number 4, colorado.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Let's jump down to District 44, starting with Ms. Alyssa Nilemo.
My name is Alyssa Nilemo, and I am a 4th-generation Coloradan who is currently working in higher education. As about a 10-year board member now with the Asian Chamber of Commerce, I am grateful and very well aware of the labor that chambers do, small businesses and local economies, and how we all benefit from those. So I do want to just thank our hosts today and sponsors for all the work that they do and hosting this forum. I think it's so important that House District 44 have representation that's going to get work done a lot like chambers do. It's about the community to serve, not about partisan politics. Some of my focuses when I'm talking about that really are making sure public education here is fully funded, to address the condo defect legislation and start to heal our housing systems, and then also to support and uplift small businesses. And I look forward to a robust conversation today.
Thank you. Mr. Hartsook?
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Parker. Thank you for attending. My name is Anthony Hartsook. I'm the current representative here for House District 44. My background is varied. I've had 26 years in the military, multiple combat deployments. I did business development upon retirement. My wife is a surgeon. We have practices here in the Parker area. We've had kids that have graduated from the schools here. I understand from my military experience, my business experience, that we need to keep the state government out of the local business. Around here, and far too often, the supermajority sitting up the state house tries to dictate to municipalities and counties how they should do businesses. And that's not right. We fight that. We're the minority. And so that's what we look at doing. We advocate for a smaller government. I brought back the Parker Wine Walks, and I will continue to support small businesses here. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Hartsook. Coming down to House District 45, let's start with Mr. Max Brooks.
Thank you, Rob. And I'm not supposed to look over here. I'm supposed to look at the cameras, but I want to thank everybody who came out in person, but then everybody joining as well. I'd like to thank the chambers, both Castle Rock and Parker chambers. Very honored to carry the Colorado Chamber of Commerce endorsement. I grew up here in Lakewood, Colorado, and have been involved with local government for the last couple of years. I'm currently an elected official for Castle Rock Town Council. You know, you have a different kind of diverse group of folks that are there, obviously in much smaller number than what you have in the House. But being able to work in a pragmatic manner and being able to work as a solutions-forward person there, that grabbed the attention of Lisa Frizzell, who is the current 45 representative. She sat me down and asked me if I would please run for her seat, so then that way she would have the ability to run for Senate that's being vacated by our good Senator Smallwood. Max Brooks for Colorado. Look forward to today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Chad Cox.
Good afternoon. First, I want to start off by thanking the Castle Rock and Parker chambers for putting this forum on together for us. My name is Chad Cox. I'm running to be your next state representative for HD 45. As a father of 5 and service member, I know the importance of community and service. As an ER nurse of 15 years, I've seen the challenges that our families in the community face. As a community member of Castle Rock for over 13 years, I know what's important to the community, and it's what touches the actual community and not false narratives. My campaign believes in the idea that if we work collectively together, we can have positive change on the things that really matter to our community, such as strong education, retaining our environmental rights, especially our water, and maintaining a sense of community that builds each and every person. I want to see us a community that lifts each other up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Well, thank you all for your opening remarks. As we mentioned, we'll have 2 questions for each area. Each one of you will be asked to pick a number, and we will start with questions. First person in the district will be able to answer that question, followed by the second person. When your questions are answered, then anyone can use a rebuttal card to add to the conversation. So let's get started. Let's choose District 45. So I start with Mr. Brooks. I'll go Mr. Cox. Mr. Cox, would you please select a question? 1 through 6.
Just say the number.
Thank you. Many Coloradans still face difficulties in accessing affordable health care. What legislative changes would you support to improve health care accessibility and affordability?
So thank you for the question. As a nurse, I really respect that question. I've seen too often the challenges, again, that families in our area face with receiving good medical care. A lot of it has to deal with the inadequate amount of physicians or primary care service that they can achieve. And so ultimately what that ends up happening is our community is driven to the ERs to receive their primary care services. And I think we all know, if you've been to the ER, how expensive that can be. And so we need to focus on a way to bring in our physicians, expanding the physician care into nurse practitioners, physician assistants to provide that primary care for our citizens so that they can maintain a healthy way of living as opposed to waiting until the last minute to show up at the ER and receive not only great care, but then a very large, exorbitant bill at the end of the visit. And ultimately, they don't actually receive full answers. They get dealt with what their complaint is for that day, and not what's ongoing in their life. We really need to be able to focus holistically on the care that they're getting from the top down, from the beginning of the illness to the end, and see it all the way through and make sure that they maintain services. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Brooks. Many Coloradans still face difficulties in accessing affordable health care. What legislative changes would you support to improve health care accessibility and affordability?
Well, one of the reasons that I carry the endorsement of the Colorado Chamber is because I'm very anti-regulation. It's regulations, it's mandates that have been so extremely detrimental to the medical industry, to industries across Colorado. We used to be, very strong economically in a regional area, but now we've fallen behind. We've fallen behind with Arizona because of regulations and mandates that come from the supermajority in the House. We need to get away from that and be able to let doctors do what doctors want to do, and that is simply care for their patients. I'm proud to carry several endorsements that are numerous enough. I have to back up here and just make sure to mention the Colorado Medical Society, Colorado Hospital Association, Colorado Academy of Family Physicians, Healthier Colorado, and even the Colorado IDD Alliance. These organizations support me or have endorsed me in my campaign because they understand that I have the ability to be able to get in there and work on their behalf and ensure that the regulations are not killing healthcare, driving up the cost. All of the red tape that the physicians have to go through, it keeps them from being able to do what they want to do, and that is care for their patients. There also is an extreme disconnect in our pharmaceutical industry. There's a group that they're supposed to kind of try to press down the cost of pharmaceuticals. But instead, it's an oligarchy. They're the ones running it up because they get a percentage of it. That has to change as well. And there's action on that at the federal level.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. We have a rebuttal. Mr. Marshall, please.
I don't know if you can hear me, but a lot of this effort on saying what's the state going to do about affordable health care, it gets very frustrating down in the Capitol and with a lot of candidates. 60 to 70% of every health care dollar in the United States is controlled or directly paid by the federal government between TRICARE, the VA, Medicare, Medicaid, FERS. Trying to do it at the state level and say we will fix it is a huge problem. I took a lot of heat of being one of the only Democrats to vote against the study to do a state-enforced one-payer system because several states have looked at it and said, no, it can only be done at the federal level because we could only adjust about 30% of the amount. The things we can do at the margins is try and get rid of these insurance mandates. Every time we put a mandate in and say the insurance companies must pay for that, it means everyone else must pay a little bit more to take care of that. The insurers must insure based on actuarial issues. We also need to look at the facility fees, and we've been doing that because a lot of companies are buying up these healthcare systems and buying up the small operators and tacking on fees because they can get them around, and people are getting hit by these thousands of dollars they don't expect.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Another rebuttal, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I appreciate everything that Mr. Marshall said in regards to insurances. I also appreciate what Mr. Brooks said in regards to regulations and keeping the government out of our healthcare system. I want to tack onto that what we're seeing nationally and could have potential direct effect more locally is abortion rights. And that's exactly what the government's doing, is impeding in on what doctors need to do to care for their patients. Abortion is so much more than black and white. It's actual health care that women need, they deserve, they should have the right to have when they come into an ER. And I would hate to see that any state regulations would impede any of my physicians that myself, nurses working with the doctors are faced up against in facing those kind of regulations made by state government. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other rebuttals? All right. We'll go to another district. I'd like to go back to District 43. Mr. Marshall, please select a number.
1.
Number 1, great. Thank you. Despite budgetary challenges looming in 2025, urgent issues like healthcare, education, infrastructure, public policy, housing, and other critical needs are among us. How would you prioritize state spending, and what trade-offs, spending cuts, would you support?
We're entering a very difficult budgetary environment coming up, and a lot of people don't understand we do have a balanced budget amendment in Colorado, and not only do we have a balanced budget amendment, we're the only state that has the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, TABOR. So not only do we have to have a balanced budget, we can't borrow to take care of issues, and we can't raise taxes or fees beyond a formula that's based on inflation and population growth. So it makes it very difficult when we have unmet needs to meet them. One issue too with TABOR that a lot of people, and I have defended TABOR from people trying to do an end run because I'm a big believer in the rule of law and we don't do end runs, especially around amendments, constitutional amendments. TABOR is as much of a constitutional amendment as the First Amendment or the Second Amendment to the US Constitution. But when we have a collapse in revenues, we have this ratchet down effect where revenues collapse, but then when they come back, we can't raise revenues because it's TABOR. And every time that's happened, we've had to go to the voters and ask for special dispensation. What I would prioritize, though, is public education and public safety. And I had some very difficult conversations with one member on the other side of the aisle who I took have a great affection for, who was on the Joint Budget Committee. Who told me I was trying to get some stuff through, and he's like, Bob, there's enough money. We just spend all our money on other little things, and then we don't have money for the big things. I thought he was just being an old curmudgeon, but there is some truth to that. And so we do need to prioritize first public safety and public education, and then the little things come next.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Are there any rebuttals? Yes, please. Ms. Nalima.
Great. And all you gentlemen are showing off, getting up and down and off these stools. I'm an address today, so you're stuck with me right here. A bit less of a rebuttal than to double down on what Rep is saying here. I also believe in investment in our public education and education in general. I think having a strong infrastructure where we are going to have real workforce preparedness and healthy communities, that is a strong investment that spreads out through everyone and is felt through that benefit. Also a big believer in local economies and small businesses, so whatever dollars I can help drive back to this community so that people here can make that investment in the communities. Activated, healthy, happy communities are also safe communities. So I see those investments really as sort of the tiers of which we hit those and we see benefit across the board.
Thank you, Ms. Nalima. Do we have any other rebuttals? All right, next question. Let's go to District 44, starting with Mr. Hartsock. Which question would you like to be asked?
Let's go to number 4.
Number 4, wonderful. During the last legislative session, a bill was introduced that would require all counties with a population of 70,000 or more people to have 5 commissioners, with at least 3 of those commissioners being elected by the residents in the district from which each commissioner runs. What would be your stance if this bill was reintroduced in 2025, and why?
Thank you for the question. It's an interesting question because it brings to light the difference between state versus county municipality. I voted no on the bill, and I'll vote no again. If the people of the county want that, great. Let the people of the county vote. If we start having the state telling the counties this is how you're going to elect your officials, then that's up to you, because then it transcends everything. We have the state sticking their nose down into county municipality business, telling them how to spend their money, whether it's on education, healthcare, roads, taxes. We constantly have the state, they passed a bill, the transit-oriented communities, trying to take money from the municipalities and counties if they didn't do the planning and building the way the states thought it should go. That's not the state's job. That job belongs to the county and the municipality. They're the closest to the people. The state should not be doing that. The same goes for just about everything else. If you execute it at the lowest level, down there where the rubber meets the road, and the municipalities and the counties have the closest pulse of the people, then that's what it should be doing. The state should be trying to fund that, send resources to help with that, and then the state should also be keeping the federal government trying to stick its nose down to telling people how to do their job at the state, and sometimes even down here at the county municipal level. That's what the state should be doing. The state should be protecting the counties and municipalities, not telling them how to do business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartsock. Ms. Nalima.
So,
do you want me to repeat the question for you?
I feel pretty good about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I cut my teeth in local governance. I started as an executive aide in a city council office. So you will always hear me say, I love local control and I believe in local control. You will also hear me say, though, I believe in transparency and good governance, and I believe that people are best represented with robust representation. And so I think as we grow, an expansion of the commissioners only makes sense. There are more voices to be heard. It brings balance and perspective to that. I'm also troubled when we have, and see at any level of governance, workarounds around open meetings. And I think what we see with the 3 commissioners is that folks can work around that and decisions can be made privately between 2 individuals. That is not what good governance is, and that's not what's transparent to the people. So if 5 commissioners brings better representation, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall's raised his rebuttal card, then we'll go to Mr. Brooks.
This was my bill, so I could talk about 10 minutes on it, and I actually need about 10 minutes, because at-large local elections have a notorious history. They're used to keep down a political minority. It doesn't matter who the political minority is. Unfortunately, in American history, it was almost always a racial political minority. So for hundreds of years, leaving it to the county, leaving it to the people, meant they were locking out racial political minorities. Colorado flew under the radar in the 80s when the DOJ wiped them out throughout the United States because we didn't have a discrete racial minority being abused. These days, we do have people being abused by not having proper representation. 2 individuals, not 3, because you just need 2. In Jefferson County, 600,000 people, $1 billion budget can control everything. County commissioners are among the most powerful positions in Colorado because there's no checks and balances on them. Governor can't do anything he wants, but once the money gets down to the county, 2 people can lock out the 3rd and do anything they want. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And I was fighting down there on the floor when it got killed on seconds with the entire Black Caucus and Latino Caucus who knew what it was about. And all the whites were fighting me.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Brooks.
Easy answer is yeah, no, not at all. I really enjoy being an elected official chosen by my constituents to represent them at town council. Let local governments do their job. A lot of passion around this issue, obviously, but you know what? We ought to be putting that passion into things like budget instead. Protecting Tabor. Let local governments do what they are supposed to do, and that is represent their constituents. Let's be real honest right now, okay? This isn't about partisan politics, what I'm about to say. We have a horrible, horrible, devastatingly negative, impactful imbalance in the House. 46 to 19. 46 to 19. Government's not supposed to work that way. I swear to you right now that if it were 46 Republicans, 19 Democrats, I would stand here right now and I would say the same thing. It's broken. And you're pushing policy through because you can? No, that's not the way to go about it. Let local governments, trust them enough, let them do what they were elected to do.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. All right, new round of questions. Let's start with, we'll go with 45, District 45, Mr. Cox. Did you pick a number?
Sure, I'll do 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Brooks' turn to go first. My mistake. Mr. Brooks. What number would you like to select?
6, please.
6, okay, thank you. There's always been a gap between the priorities of the urban interests and those of the rural areas of Colorado. We share some of the same urban priorities like transportation, housing, and density. We also share some of the rural priorities like local control, land use, and burdensome state mandates. How should Douglas County navigate the space between these competing constituencies?
Yeah, in many ways, this is going to go back to just what that last question was addressing, right? That we have a very diverse communities throughout the Front Range. The decisions cannot be made effectively at the state level thinking that there's some sort of one-size-fits-all, there's some sort of ideological Band-Aid that works all the way down throughout all of Colorado. You know, the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment was particularly impactful because that's what drove the property tax increase. Now, we can't have, it's unconstitutional, you can't have a Gallagher Amendment for one part of the state and a Gallagher for a different part of the state. It was particularly impactful to those rural areas, but it was devastatingly bad for all of the populated areas as we saw with our property tax increase. That's yet another example of what happens when a one-size-fits-all approach is attempted. We need to be able to work on transportation and housing. 213 was a total disaster that was 2 sessions ago, that would have completely removed all local zoning control. That means that a developer could come in to the single-family home next door to you, knock it down and build a sixplex with no parking requirements. That's what that very short-sighted legislation was about, because that was the one-size-fits-all from the top down. That's not the way that things are supposed to work. Leave it up to the local areas, the local regional areas, to decide what's best for their area from transportation and housing. Those will be the solutions that will stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
So I agree with Mr. Brooks that we do have a very diverse population. But what's funny is we're not led that way. We're led in a very monolithic way of thinking, and so it ends up leaving out a sect of our community that doesn't have a voice. And I have to say that we have a democracy for a reason and a constitution for a reason, and the democracy is to give majority rule. But the Constitution is meant to give protection to the minority that's left behind after majority rule. And so when we start talking about local control, what concerns me, coming from a person that grew up in a rural community, I may have different needs that the inner city people might have, but we have the same values, and we want the same things. We want our voices to be heard, we want our people to be successful, we want to feel welcomed and wanted into our communities, and without that, you have a disarray of people and you have disagreement amongst the government. The government should be supporting and representing the people. And when you have local control that is only supporting and representing a certain group of people, you do not have representation of a diverse community. And that shows in our housing population and the inability for people to live where they work, teach where they work, protect where they work. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any rebuttals? Yes, Ms. Nilimo.
So when I think about urban and rural, I think about the work I've done in Denver versus the fact that my roots come from the San Luis Valley, and the only reason we're not farmers today is because they did a buy and dry with my family's land. So I'm very aware of the tension between the two dynamics happening here in Douglas County, and I look at what Mr. Brooks has mentioned about the imbalance in the House a little differently. I look at as we have a very Denver Metro-centric legislator that, you're right, can push through things. And so I want to make sure that we have a strong voice that is actually asked to the table and can negotiate on behalf of Douglas County and House District 44 to make sure we are getting the things we need, because we are not Denver, we are not Boulder, and that is just a political measurement that has to happen in order to balance that.
Thank you. Any additional? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Hosek.
Thank you. And they talk about all the time at the Capitol, the urban-rural divide. There's countless laws that are passed by the Denver-Boulder community. One of them is the work week and the 40 hours. They mandated, so one size fits all. As a rancher who runs the milk farm out east said, milk cows do not operate on a 40-hour work week. They need milking 4 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our caucus constantly fights the one-size-fits-all, I'm the state, I'm going to tell you how to do your business, whether it's healthcare, roads, schools, it doesn't matter. We are constantly being told where the state's trying to stick its nose into the county business. That's the county business to decide. And it's up to those people to elect those county officials, whether they always agree with them or not. That's their choice and their call. So that's what we push for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartsook. Any additional rebuttals? All right. We'll move to District 43. Mr. Marshall, please pick a number.
3.
Number 3, perfect. Douglas County has a highly regarded school district, but there are concerns about the funding and curriculum. What changes, if any, would you advocate for the state's education system, including funding and state mandates?
Yeah, when I moved here to Douglas County in 2004, we had one of the highest rated school districts in the state. It was consistently in the top 5. After my daughter graduated and was no longer a part of it in about 2009, I stopped paying attention. When I started paying attention again, we were dropped down into like 19 and 20. I was like, what the heck happened? We've been clawing our way back. But one thing I keep hearing a lot from, especially people on the other aisle, is, well, we got to get in there and renegotiate the School Funding Act. We reopen that and renegotiate, we can only lose, and I will make that clear. We will only lose. There is no appetite for Douglas County getting more money out of the state budget for education. Our colleagues look at us, we are the 6th to 8th richest county in the United States, and wonder why we don't fund our own schools while they're trying to fund the rural and other schools. So there is no appetite for that, and I was one of the only people to vote against the Speaker's own bill. It was her own bill because it was not appropriate for Douglas County. I was the only legislator in Douglas County that voted against it. And hopefully it looks like it will not have enough funding to trigger it. But I am one of the top, I'm endorsed by the Colorado Education Association, I'm endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers, and I'm endorsed by Corey Wise, the former superintendent. Very well-regarded individual. And Eliza Hamrick, and Lukens, who are probably the top 2 legislators in the entire state house on education issues, are huge supporters of mine. And I was there with them when there were only 10 people that voted against the Speaker's bill because that bill was bad for Cherry Creek and it was bad for Douglas County.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Brooks has a rebuttal.
Mr. Osborne, can you repeat the very last word in your question?
Yes. Last word?
Yes.
State mandates.
Oh, mandates.
2
Where's
words,
that word
actually.
again? So you know what happens with mandates, right? So I think that as a freshman representative, you get up to the House, you've got all these ideas, you say, oh, you know what, I want to get this done, I want to get this done, and then you're told, you know, there's a $900 million budget deficit. There's no money for anything. And so you come up with mandates, because the other word that goes with mandates is unfunded. Unfunded mandates means you pay for it. That should not be happening. Small government, local government, free market. If the school system is having a hard time, you know why the school system is also having a hard time? Because parental choice. There has been a very large, I have nothing against the Douglas County School District, but there has been a lot of loss of confidence there, right? People want home education. They want to be able to go to charter schools. They want to be able to seek out the education that they feel is right for their children. You shouldn't have to pay for it. They should make the choice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. Additional rebuttal, Mr. Cox.
It's funny that we are talking about parents should have the choice. They do have the choice of where their kids go to school at. You can have homeschooling, you can have charter schools, you can have private schools, and we can have a really great public school system. What we can't have is people taking away funding for those that can't afford to go to those private schools, because then you take their choice away. You don't have a choice when you have to pocket several $1,000s a month for a private school education that isn't going to give you a broad insight of what the world is today. It's not going to be mandated, sure, but you're going to have a group of students that walk out into the world with a large, vast skill set of thinking and experiences that they meet that you wouldn't see otherwise that you get from a public school system. So why fight for something that we already have? It's in system, it's in place, keep it where it is, but let's keep funding and figure out a different way, a better way to fund it. Maybe it's reworking Tabor.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Yes, Ms. Limo.
All right, I actually will get off the stool for this one because this public education. I have worked in early childhood education, I work in higher education, and I will tell you, every time we underfund it, we are hurting ourselves, we are hurting our communities, we are not coming up with some better solution. And so I will just speak in support of the work Rep. Marshall has done and say we need more voices and votes up at the House saying Douglas County needs that money because we need to make an investment in our schools. This last year we had to close a school because we could not flush toilets in one of our buildings. That is absolutely unacceptable. We need to remain competitive by paying our teachers. We need to make sure infrastructure is there so that you can make choices about where you send your kids, absolutely. But there should be real choices. And so let's make sure Rep. Marshall is not up there fighting alone.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hartsock.
Thank you. I serve on the Education Committee. I also taught in the charter school after I retired from the military. And I taught, when I was in the military, not only the schoolhouse, but I tutored high school algebra to help kids. We've passed several bills, and I supported the bill that the speaker brought, along with our minority leader, because it's the first time we did finance reform in over 3 decades. In addition, we passed another piece of legislation that was workforce development. Are you graduating through school and either going on to an apprenticeship, a 2-year, 4-year, post-grad, whatever? Are you getting a job where you have an ROI and you can become contributing into society? Are you able to pay your bills, make your job? That's what we need to be developing. And I don't care if you go through neighborhood schools, which are both public and charter schools, private schools, home schools, it doesn't matter. If you go through that school, you get the education that you and your parents want you to get, and you can go on and become a productive person in society. That's what we need to achieve. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we're down to the last question, so we'll go to House District 44. Ms. Limo, you are the person to speak first on this, so
I guess I'll pick number 5.
Okay, thank you for picking number 5 as well. Given warming trends, our arid climate, and water scarcity issues with water resources, what water resource management efforts would you support to ensure sustainability for future generations?
So water rights are complex, and we know that in this state, we are the headwaters for many places. And so the decisions we make about water are so important. What I will say is there's not a single entity that can solve or resolve this problem. And this is one of those where we have to work across all levels of governance and across all communities. Again, my family lost their farm because of buy and dry. Buy and dry does not work. We also know that building on aquifers and unrenewable water also does not work. So we need to be working across boundaries, across counties, to figure out what are our sustainable ability with water, what are efficiencies. I mean, it can be as simple as maybe we all really don't need Kentucky bluegrass all over the state of Colorado. So we need to be thinking about what supports our farmers, our agriculture, and then gets water to people that is green and renewable. And those would be my priorities at whatever level we are able to move that needle.
Thank you. Mr. Hartsook?
Thank you. You know, water's an interesting topic. Having been stationed overseas and been in a lot of very desert climates, and I was also stationed in Arizona, they've run kind of a 2-tier system down there where a lot of your parks and recs and grass is watered with reclaimed water. It's not potable, but it's reclaimed. And they save the potable water for drinking water. We do live in a semi-arid climate here. What we lack in this state is reservoirs. We lack the ability to hold and retain water. And because we always have some kind of environmental groups going, oh, you can't do this because of some squirrel or some owl. Yet people are suffering. Housing is tied directly to water. If you can't get the water, you can't build the homes. Then people can't move here, then prices go up. So it all needs to be coordinated and work together. But having seen where they've done it successfully in other states, they've done it overseas, it can be tackled here. But so far, you've had massive groups that have been in absolute tug of war, and we continue to see the prices of housing and everything go up. And until we get that to where people become the priority versus an animal, we're going to have a hard time building the reservoirs, getting more water retention, getting the ability to share water across multiple districts. When you look at the ranchers out there, if you want to eat, they need the water too. And so keeping them full of water is critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal? Yes, sir. Mr. Marshall.
In 2022, when I interviewed with the Colorado Association of Realtors, the interview was supposed to go 15 minutes. It wound up going 35 minutes because we were talking so much among each other. And when we got done, their chief lobbyist came up to me and said, you know, you are the first person and candidate we've talked to in 3 months who can talk about Colorado's water issues. That actually scared the hell out of me because I knew very little. I thought I knew very little. But talking about saying we need to build more reservoirs, the problem is the down basin people have water rights we have to fulfill. And we had a Centennial Water Forum that all the candidates and all the elected leaders were asked to go to. I went because it was a good thing to understand all the water issues out here in Douglas County and Elbert and Arapahoe County. My opponent, of course, didn't show up, even though he's the RWR water boy and getting all the money to try and take the San Luis Valley's water and have Douglas County pay for the infrastructure to bring it over here. And we will be paying it forever so people can buy the water in San Luis for $1.80 an acre foot and sell it for $7 here and make a fortune. That's not what I'll be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Any other rebuttals? Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, again, a lot of these issues need to be solved on a regional or a municipal level. I have absolutely in full agreement with perhaps, Kentucky bluegrass isn't necessarily the best choice. Irrigation is where so much of our water goes. However, I don't want to see that decision made at the state. I believe that that's a decision that should be made at a local municipal level. I'll tell you this, Castle Rock Water is doing a fantastic job. District 45 that I'm seeking to represent at the House, it's Castle Rock basically. It's South Pradera and South Pinery. Castle Rock Water is doing a fantastic job. Not a lot of people realize this, but through the work of town council, town staff, and an amazing Mark Marlowe, amazing water director, we're going to be 100% renewable within the next couple of decades. 100% renewable. We did that in Castle Rock. Again, those solutions shouldn't be done at the state. They need to be incentivized to be solved on a local level.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Yes, sir, Mr. Hartsook.
Thanks. Just to reiterate a few things. We got Parker Water here. You've heard about Castle Rock. There's a lot of water districts that work together. Parker Water is working with districts up north to respect water rights of everybody. And yet, at the same time, it's amazing you can respect water rights, and wow, you can build reservoirs, because that's exactly what they're doing up there, so they can retain more water, so we can share it and get everybody to grow. It's not a one or the other, as has been stated. You can have both. You can keep your water rights, and you can build reservoirs, and you can build houses, because people are going to keep moving to Colorado. So if the option is to tell them no, which probably won't go too well, or figure out how to work with them and work within the water districts, that seems a much more congenial way to get about doing things. And that's what we have consistently worked at doing. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. Any additional rebuttals? All right, well, thank you. Now each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for their closing remarks. I'll start with House District 43, Mr. Bob Marshall.
I've had a lot of people call me a weird unicorn down there in the Capitol, but I actually say it's a platypus because I'm not that good looking. We have, everyone talks about bipartisanship. 7 of my 8 bills last session got out of their committees unanimously. All the Republicans, all the Democrats voted for it. The only one that did not got out with bipartisan support, and it had bipartisan opposition because it was a very sensitive political bill. I work completely across the aisle. In fact, the GOP's own Liberty scorecard ranks me as the most moderate Democrat out of 69, and the person who keeps that scorecard not only said was I the most moderate Democrat ranked in this last legislative session in the last 2, but the most she had ever seen. I represent the district, not an ideology and not special interests. But I am very big about good governance, and my closest friends and colleagues down there are the progressives, and they do a lot of things for me without even doing formal amendments when I ask them because they know where I'm coming from. I'm not beholden to anyone, and they know that, and that's been very helpful to me when I ask them for something. They know it's not for some special interest. It's for my district. The good governance part has become a big part of what I'm down there for. Many of you may have heard about the Sunshine Law action, which I took up against the entire state house and leadership of both parties for stuff that had been going on down there. A former Senate Majority Leader of the GOP said it was one of the most courageous things he'd ever seen. I brought the vacancy committee bill. It did not get through, but we haven't had a single person give up their seat so the party can appoint their own person in. I'll do what's right.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. We'll go to House District 44, Mr. Hartsook.
Thank you. One of the things that I have learned throughout my military career, business career, teaching, and now at the State House is that when things are so severely lopsided, it usually doesn't work well. Our government is a constitutional republic. It's representative. Right now, the Democrats control every single seat of power in the state government. The House, the Senate, the governorship, all of it. We are looking to bring balance. We are looking to bring common sense back there because one size does not fit all. One size doesn't dictate from the metro area down to rural communities or smaller communities or counties or municipalities. We fight to make sure that that one size doesn't get shoved down everyone else's throat. Because there are so many pieces of legislation, 705 from this last session alone, that were passed that businesses and municipalities are trying to react to and figure out, what does this mean? How does this impact me? From countless fees that increase inflation. From a business model, the state used to be ranked in the top 10, we're now down around 38. Our cost of inflation has gone up. Human trafficking is through the roof. Crime is going up. We need to start addressing these issues, and we need to start doing it through a balanced representative government. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nalimo.
My family is all too aware of the consequences of government overreach. In World War II, they were Japanese Americans living on the West Coast when the federal government decided they would intern people. And at that time, there was a courageous Republican leader, Ralph Carr, who said absolutely not, and made Colorado my family's home. And that stopped his career, but it was about putting people before politics. And so we've talked a lot about fighting. I don't want to fight. I want to lead. I want to lead in a way where House District 44 gets the things they need. And I believe that we are positioned to do that we are a great place to live. Crime is down over the last 2 years. Business is good. We have a beautiful place to live. We're going to fight for public education. And so what I'm asking folks is, let's lean in to what makes our county beautiful and take a risk. Choose courageous leadership. Put people before politics. Stop fighting. Get the work done. And then the rest will handle itself. Thank you. Alyssa Nilamo.
Thank you. House District 45, Mr. Brooks.
Absolutely right. Bipartisanship and being able to work together for solutions. That's what it comes down to. This job is really not all that difficult, right? You go and you talk, you should be, talking to your constituents, because not every resident in District 45 has the ability to go to the Capitol and give their opinion. That's what I'm hired to do, right? I'm hired to take their concerns and the things that they are most concerned about and make sure that's represented. So it comes down to be very, very simple. We need solutions. We can't be in a political trench throwing grenades at each other that doesn't get anything done. I will tell you that what I'm hearing, public safety. People are concerned about public safety. You can say whatever phantom menace, but it's on people's minds. It's the #1 issue in this election, public safety. Can't get around it. Can't pretend, can't stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not an issue. The other thing is the economy. I just heard 2 words not too long ago that terrify me, really, truly terrify me. Reworking Tabor. Let's put that into 3 words. Steal your money. That's what reworking Tabor means. Steal your money. Proposition HH, overwhelmingly passed. Voters said stay out of Tabor. Yet, what are we doing? Continuing to take and take and take away from Tabor like it's some piggy bank. The economy is important. We need to protect that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Cox.
Thanks. So again, I want to thank Parker and Castle Rock Chamber for holding this event. I think it's interesting that Mr. Brooks feels privileged enough to put words into my mouth. I did not say steal your money, nor would I. But when we have an issue that is continually taking away potential growth of our communities, growth in our public education, there is something that needs to be addressed there. So yes, rework it. We need to have a government that is cohesive and collaborative. And far too long in this district, it's been directive. We've been told what they're going to do. Government doesn't show up. We don't know that we're being represented. we don't know what voice is being said or lifted at the Capitol. I'm going to change that. I'm going to be the person that is open, transparent, comes to you, talks to you about actual local issues and not a false national narrative that is meant to divide us instead of bring us together as a community. I want to see our public school system stronger. I want to see an infrastructure that, or a growth that aligns with our current infrastructure. And I want to protect the entirety of HD 45. So yes, public safety is important, and we should focus on public safety, but we should do it locally and not on a false national narrative. We should bring everybody together, not divide. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank each of our candidates for joining us today. We appreciate learning more about your priorities if elected in November. Thank you again to our sponsors to making this event possible, the Aloha Fund, the Douglas County Democrats, the Douglas County Republicans. This has been a collaborative event with the Castle Rock Chamber of Commerce and the Parker Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us today.